Hey everyone, and welcome back to Afrodo Reviews. On this channel, I help you decide, is that book worth reading of a second breakfast? Or does it deserve the fiery pits of Mount Doom? I also bring you a dog that doesn't know the meaning of personal space. This one doesn't either, but, she's too small to get up in my face, so. Anyways, we come to another month, the month of July. Now, anyone who's been following the channel for the past 2 years knows what the month of July brings us. That's right. This is my birth month. I'm a ruby child, everyone. But because it's my birth month, I like to do something every month during my birth month and go back and look at some of my favorite books during childhood. What better way to celebrate getting older than going back and ruining the fond memories I have? Every month I go back and look at some of the books I loved during a childhood and, reread them. Do they stand up still? Most of the time they do. Sometimes they don't. So, you know what? Let's just go ahead and get into it. There's not much I can say other than to prepare you for that. I definitely want to get this one out as opposed to the other one. I did technically film June TBR, but I didn't edit it and get it out in time, mostly because there's a lot of issues with it. And honestly, I was just happier not putting it out than re-recording it because I didn't have the time. My work makes it very hard to get the time to record. But in any case, let's get started. Now, the first book this month is going to be Gary Paulsen's Transall Saga. Now, this book holds something of a special place in my heart. Back when I was in grade school still, I want to say 4th grade. It's been long enough that I genuinely don't remember who. I keep wanting to say 5th grade, but it could be 4th. But anyways, I was one of those few kids who joined the book club. And we worked together and, read a couple books, talked about them and all that. I learned the important lesson of don't spoil the book for other people during that time. So, yeah. Which is actually a good thing to know because, I was the main one who read in my family. And so it was hard that you didn't really talk about books with other people. So I was really glad that I learned that lesson. I really carried it these days. I know I kind of spoil stuff in my reviews, but these are spoiler-based reviews, so sorry about that. But anyways, that aside, the Transall Saga has that special place in my heart. It's actually, when I think about it, it's actually kind of an isekai kind of story because the main premise of the story is a kid, I don't remember how old he's supposed to be, he might be a teenager, but a kid or a man gets teleported to an unknown world where he has to survive. But why am I trying to remember this? Why am I trying to tell you what this is about from memory? Let's go ahead and read the back of the book so you can know what I'm talking about. Now, Mark's solo camping trip in the desert turns into a terrifying and thrilling odyssey when a mysterious beam of light transports him to another time on what appears to be another planet. As Mark searches for a pathway back to his own time on Earth, he must make a new life in a new world. His encounters with primitive tribes bring the joy of human bonds, but violence and war as well. And finally, a contest in which he discovers his own startling powers. That's pretty much it. So reading the back of the book, already knowing most of the twists that happen in this book, I kind of realized that the back sort of spoils some things if you're astute enough to notice it. So I kind of realized some of the twists that this book is going to have, and I'm noticing a very careful word choice, also the mistaken word choice. This doesn't quite look like the version I read. I remember the version I read maybe being smaller, but like I said, this was back in 4th grade, so it's been long enough that my memories, I don't trust them too strongly. Plus, I wasn't actually this big until, high school, so it might have actually been this size, and I just thought it was a big book or something, And then, in my mind, translating it through the years, oh, it clearly must have been small because I was so tiny. Anyways. But yeah, this will be book number 1 of this week. Of this month. Technically this week because it will be coming out in the same week. But anyways. Book 1 of this month. Transall Saga by Gary Paulsen. The second book is another one I've had a lot of fun with. It was actually it's a book my dad bought me way back when. I don't remember when he bought it for me. I know I had it since 3rd grade though. But it's a book I've had for a very long time. This is actually a replacement This is actually a replacement I had because the one I have, the cover was torn off. Like, it was destroyed. But when you have a book for about 20 years, that kind of happens. But anyways, this book was one of my favorites as a kid. It was actually recently that I found out this book had sequels to it, and I was like, what? It had sequels and I never found out? But I guess I really don't know what to say about this book to really prepare you for my experiences that I had with it. It was one of my more solitary books, the kind of one I read, but I don't think anyone else ever read. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. So let's go ahead and just read the back of the book. Now, you're going to have to excuse this little orange thing on the cover here. I can't get it off. So, anyways. Shade is a young silver-winged bat. Very bad timing. Don't give me that look. Shade is a young silver-winged bat, the runt of his colony, but he's determined to prove himself on the long, dangerous winter migration to Hibernacula. Millions of winged bats to the south. Oh, millions of winged beats. Got that wrong. I was wondering why that didn't sound right in my head. During a fierce storm, he loses the others and soon faces the most incredible journey of his young life. Desperately searching for a way to rejoin his flock, Shade meets a remarkable cast of characters. Mariana, a bright-winged bat with a strange metal band on her leg. Zephyr, a mystical albino bat with a strange gift. And Goth, a gigantic carnivorous vampire bat. But which ones are friends and which ones are enemies? In this epic story of adventure and suspense, Shade is going to need all the help he can find if he hopes to ever see his family again. So this is actually kind of one of those books that I read, like I said, I read a long time ago. A lot of my memories of it are Yes, you're good, go. But a lot of my memories of it are a bit hazy. I do remember a couple scenes from this book, and thinking on them, like, that was pretty dark for a kid's book. You know, in comparison, it's sort of like, at the time you don't realize how dark it is, but then you read it later on, you're like, wow, this is, equating this nowadays, this is actually a really dark scene. But, this is, I guess, technically one of my first fantasy stories. That the book labels itself as a tour de force fantasy. And it's kind of true. I mean, it is kind of a fantasy. I would argue... I'm not sure I would argue it's a fantasy, to be completely honest. Based on what I remember, mind you. So it could be a much more fantastical work than I remember. But for the most part, it seems more like a contemporary fiction, but if the main characters were bats. But anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the third book of this month. That'll be second. It'll be coming up 8 days from now, because when this video comes out, why am I trying to put a date on this? Anyways, so the next book will be continuing along the lines of my reading material as a kid. I was picking this out and I realized, I think I had a weird preference as a kid. So anyways, this book, actually, technically speaking, what I'm about to talk about isn't the first book I read in this series. It was actually like the 7th book, but that was because I came in on the sequel series and found out this was a series retroactively. So, that being said, this is one I actually could talk about, although not until like after I had actually moved on past it. But this book is the Warrior Cats franchise. Namely, the very first in the series, Into the Wild. Now, I don't know how many people have read this. At the time, it felt like this really big series. It actually kind of is a massive series if I think about it, because I think they're on on the series 8 or 9, and each series has at least 6 books. So we're talking like 42 books in this entire series. So yeah, but this is definitely a good example of something that is a lot darker than I was anticipating when I first picked it up. I mean, it's a story about wild cats, after all, right? You would think that, it's going to play up that angle. But, No, I remember getting pretty dark. Like, really dark. Like, very dark. I don't know how else to say it. It's just like, I can remember some scenes from it. Like, I know at one point in the series, a cat gets half their face torn off by a pack of wild dogs. But this was actually a surprisingly dark series. The more I think back on my memories with it. But like I said, when I first started this, I actually started with the sequel series following the main character here, Firepaw, Fireclaw, Firestar. It's the cats have their own society, but following his journey through, going from a house cat who runs away after he finds out that he's about to be neutered, and becoming the leader of a pack of wild cats known as ThunderClan. But anyways, I'm not sure I can say much more on this. Obviously, it's it's going to be a spoiler if I talk too much. I actually do want to know. I kind of want to know about all of these, but this is kind of one of the ones I'm most interested in. If you've ever read Warrior Cats, let me know, because it's kind of one of those. I'm wondering if it was just me, if this is one of those niche things that you only know about if you read it as a kid, or it's actually a very popular series. So it seems in my excitement to record that this TBR, I forgot to read the back of this book. So let me just go ahead and fix that real quick. Fire alone can save our clan. For generations, 4 clans of cats have shared the forest, but Thunder Clan is in grave danger, and Shadow Clan grows stronger every day. In the midst of this turmoil appears a house cat named Rusty, who may turn out to be the bravest warrior of them all. That's it. That's the end of it. Bye. But to continue on with stories about anthropomorphic animals. They're not technically anthropomorphic, other than the sense they can talk. But to continue on with my talking animals menage here, let's go ahead and talk about the next book. The Guardians of Ga'Hoole, The Capture. Now, I like that was smooth. Anyways, now the Guardians of Ga'Hoole was actually kind of was almost a substitute series for when I was reading Warrior Cats, because I'm actually old enough that when Warrior Cats was coming out, I was fully caught up, and there was only 2 series. I think the extent I actually bought the series 3, the first book in series 3 when it came out, and so that tells you kind of how old I am, if anyone wants to know. But so I was looking for a new series, kind of along the same lines when I picked up Guardians of Ga'Hoole. I will say that unlike Silverwing or Warrior Cats, I will classify this much stronger in the fantasy element. Guardians of Ga'Hoole seem to exist, as far as I remember, seems to exist in its own little world where owls are kind of the dominant species. You have them, again, this is all based on what I can remember, but you have them like smithing steel claws for war, burning trees down, having this entire society where they write stuff. This is far more of a fantasy novel than I would say Silverwing is, at least based on my memory. But what's this about? Well, let's go ahead and talk about it. Or at least read the back. Soren is born in the forest of Taito, a tranquil kingdom where barn owls dwell. But evil lurks in the owl world, evil that threatens to shatter Taito's peace and change the course of Soren's life forever. Soren is captured and taken to a dark, forbidding canyon. It's called an orphanage, but Soren believes it's something far worse. He and his friend Gylfi know that the only way out is up. To escape, they need to do something they've never done before. Fly. And so begins a magical journey. Along the way, Soren and Gylfi meet Twilight and Digger. The 4 owls band together to seek truth and protect the owl world from unimaginable danger. So the Guardians of Ga'Hoole is I know Guardians of Ga'Hoole get way more into the fantasy epic the further on it goes. And why are you tricking me? You're evil. But Guardians of Ga'Hoole is way more of a fantasy epic. I know I keep repeating that. I can't think real. She's attacking my hand as I try to speak to you guys. But I read this series. I kept up with the series pretty well, at least until about book 7. That's kind of when I dropped it. It was because that was when it kind of switched perspectives to a character I'd never heard about before. And then when I tried to pick it up again, it was like the series wasn't even telling a... The series was telling a story in a story. Like, there was like 3 books where the entire story was they're reading a journal about something that happened. And it was one of those, at the time as a kid, I did not appreciate that in the slightest. I wanted the story to be what was going on in the moment, not, hey, let's read this book for 3 books. Give me my finger back, you little shit. No, I love you. I love you too. But anyways, to try and finish this talk before I strangle a dog, leave my hand alone. Leave it alone. But yeah, that's the series. So I'm hoping this holds up on a reread, and let's move on before I strangle a pug on camera. I kid, by the way. I would never hurt this dog. And admit it on this channel. So for this final book, I had a little trouble deciding. I'm actually starting to get near the end of the books that I have saved as a kid. At least ones I really want to talk about. I really contemplated doing Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Or the Philosopher's Stone, technically, because even though I'm American, I'm not so stupid I don't know the difference between a sorcerer and a philosopher. But anyways... But Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. But you are a lot bigger. She hooks my pinky in her jaw and I can pull it away. You hook my hand in your mouth, it's gone. Anyways, cross my hands up here because they won't let me. They won't let me put my hand down there where it normally is. So anyways, but so I was trying to figure out what to do. I mean, obviously I could continue with Bersinger from the Aragon series. I do remember my favorite part of that book being the Roarin' parts of the book, but maybe time will bring me back around to Aragon's side. Maybe I'll appreciate that a little more. But I would say that... Will you guys not wrestle under the table? But I decided against that as well. So I thought, well, if I'm going to review any second book of any series I've already done, it's got to be of my favorite series so far. So naturally speaking, I went ahead and chose Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Sea of Monsters. Now, for those of you who watched my very first nostalgic reevaluation month TBR, you know that I think I did a TBR on this. Anyways, you know that when it came to Percy Jackson, I actually read the book series backwards. At least at the time it was out. So when I read the book, it was actually Titan's Curse first, and I was so enraptured with the world, but I didn't quite understand what was going on. So I went back, I found the Sea of Monsters. Okay, so this is going to help me more. That still wasn't the first one? So then I found the Lightning Thief. So I read this entire series backwards, much like a couple other series I've done. Again, watch the first review if you want me to go more in depth on that. But anyways, so I decided I wanted to go ahead and do this. So technically, this was the second book of the Percy Jackson series I read. Just not in the right order. But anyways, I hear you ask, what is it about? I keep saying anyways. I'm aware of it, guys. You don't have to comment. Anyways. That being said, here's the synopsis. Percy Jackson, 7th grade year, has been surprisingly quiet. Not a single monster has set foot on his New York prep school campus. But when an innocent game of dodgeball among Percy and his classmates turned into a death match against an ugly gang of cannibal giants, things get, well, ugly. And the unexpected arrival of his friend Annabeth brings more bad news. The magical borders of Camp Half-Blood have been poisoned by a mysterious enemy. And unless a cure is found, the only safe haven for demigods will be destroyed. In this fresh, funny, and wildly popular follow-up to The Lightning Thief, Percy and his friends must journey into the Sea of Monsters to save their camp. But first, Percy will discover a stunning new secret about his family, one that makes him question whether being claimed as Poseidon's son is an honor or simply a cruel joke. One of the things that a more mature perspective had brought on me is, I know there is something of a controversy behind this book. And that controversy comes in the place of Tyson. Now, in the book, he's described as a very slow child. In fact, he's basically called a R-word. Or, can't really use that because that's my go-to word for the much more harsher R-word, but they call him something we've tried to say, don't call people with mental disorders, I guess. Or neurodivergency. I'm trying to find a way to say it, but basically I remember that. But I'm not sure I ever agreed with that. It has been a little bit since I read it, but as far as I remember, the people who called Tyson that were always in the wrong. But again, you know what? I'm going to address this more after I've read the book so I can speak on it from a fresh perspective. Ignore me for now. With that being said, I should end now. My voice is starting to hurt. My throat hurts quite a bit these days. Or today, at least. Not these days. So that's what I've been sipping on as a tea concoction here. My health poultice, as it were. You know, because I'm going to take the Dragon Age Origin approach and drink it rather than, apply it. Anyways. That being said, just remember, with every book comes an adventure. And every adventure is worth having. Even the bad ones. Okay. Now,